Hi everyone, this is Perfume Coast, so welcome to my channel. As I continue talking about different profiles and notes in the fragrance world, today it's all about almond. So without further ado, let's jump into the ocean of perfumes. And the first perfume I'd like to talk about is called Infusion de Amande, belonging to the famous Infusion line by the house Prada. But first let's dive into the notes as usual that Fragrantica is giving us. So what we're having here would be bitter almond, heliotrope, musk, tonka bean and anise. So this one opens powdery with distinct clean undertone typical to Infusion line. It dries down to a more and more almond forward dimension and eventually takes this creamy turn. It ends up gourmand fragrance with a bit of initial clean and quite powdery base. So next up is a brilliant release by the house BDK, which is called Velvet Tonka. And let's get reminded of the notes that this one is having. So according to Fragrantica, on the top we've got almond, orange blossom, in the middle we've got tobacco and rose oil, and finally in the base there's tonka bean, bourbon vanilla, amberwood and amarice. From the very start, this one is a solid, powdery, quite sweet gourmand leaning scent. The almond and tonka are two main players here, giving off this dense velvety undertone. It's also certainly quite perfumey, along with gourmand qualities, and I detect also a bit of boozy, rum-like accord. Overall, beautiful almond-forward, elegant scent from Gourmand Street. Next up is another brilliant gourmand that's still very popular in the fragrance community, and this one is no other as the release of Xerjoff called Italica. And of course, let's get reminded of this popular one in terms of the notes. So on the top, yet again, we've got almond, also milk and saffron. In the middle, there's toffee and bourbon vanilla. And finally, in the base, there's sandalwood and white musk. So this one is probably the most gourmand-leaning almond in my collection. This one gives off a bit of cherry, quite a lot of doughy effect, creating this cakey effect with sweet syrupy base. Almond here serves a supporting role, breaking down this otherwise powerful sweetness of freshly baked, slightly boozy cherry pie. Overall, distinct recurring winter favorite in fragrance community up to date. Talking of cherries, we've got another brilliant release and budgetary one, by the way, by the house Maboussin, and this one is called Star Cherie. So let's dive into the notes that this one is having. On the top, of course, we've got almond yet again. Also, we've got Brazilian orange. In the middle, there's cherry, lilac, raspberry, and jasmine. And finally, in the base, there's vanilla, tonka bean, sandalwood, and vetiver. So, again, talking of cherry, this perfume is a distinct representative of one. And cherry is front and center here. It's sweet, syrupy, giving off maraschino cherry vibe. And once again, almond supports our leading cherry accord here, highlighting its natural quality by way of emphasizing a cherry pit part. And almond in fragrances does it, this cherry pit effect, because almond itself smells very similar to it, giving off this fresh, pit-like woody effect. So next up, we've got another brilliant and budgetary release. So this one is called, it belongs to the house Liu Jo Milano, and I think it's called the same way, Liu Jo. So, but let's dive into the notes of this one. So according to Fragrantica, what we're dealing here with would be almond, orange blossom and mandarin orange on the top. In the middle, there's hazelnut, cacao, and orange blossom. And finally, in the base, there's vanilla, tonka bean, vetiver, and patchouli. So this one smells very similar to Kayali Yum Pistachio Gelato, but for a fraction of price, really. This is not a complete dupe, though, but here, instead of pistachio, we've got almond that's very prominent. But the overall vibe is, yet again, very similar to the way ice cream was portrayed by Kayali. This ice cream, or gelato rather, is therefore a perfumed twist on its imagery, giving off this sparkly, translucent, sweet cotton candy quality with a bit of nutty undertone. And it's almond here that creates this fresh effect, I think. So next up, we've got yet another popular release. This one is by house Sol de Janeiro, and this one is called Cheriosa 62. So let's get reminded of the notes that this one is having. So according to Fragrantica, what we're dealing here with would be pistachio and almond. In the middle there's heliotrope and jasmine, and finally in the base there's caramel, vanilla, salt and sandalwood. So this one is a silver medal award as far as gourmand element is concerned. So this is of course a very popular and quite an affordable offering. It's sweet, mind you, not overly sweet, extremely nutty, and once again giving off this cookie dough quality which I just love. And this cookie dough contains of course crushed almond. It's also creamy, a bit lactonic, a bit solar and quite beachy as well. All in all, a delicious creamy nutty cookie dough gourmand. As it dries down though, it sort of gets more translucent and less thick, but it never loses its gourmand leaning nutty quality nonetheless. So next up we've got another brilliant and unique release. This one is by house Marc Jacobs, and this one is called Perfect Intense. So let's say about the notes that this one is having. So according to Fragrantica, on the top we've got narcissus, blooming jasmine, in the middle there's almond, and in the base there's sandalwood. So once again, we're talking of almond supporting this floral gourmand fragrance composition. This composition is very fresh and sweet. Freshness goes here as far as giving off this citrusy effect. I can literally smell bergamot in here, I think. But in fact, this citrusy freshness is achieved by a note of almond. A lot of people smell popcorn, and yes, there's this bit of nutty corn-like quality here, but to my nose, not quite reaching that full-on impression. But what it is to me is this quite unique scent, giving off this slightly gourmand, nutty, but sparkly fresh composition supported by a note of almond. So next up, we've got another unique release that I just love. This one is by house Givenchy, and this one is called Pie. So let's say about the notes that this one is having according to Fragrantica. So on the top we've got mandarin orange, tarragon, rosemary and basil. In the middle there's anise, neroli, geranium and lily of the valley. And in the base we've got vanilla, almond, tonka bean, benzoin and cedar. So this almond scent of fragrance is a man offering in fact. But I really smell a true unisex release. In fact, it leans slightly feminine to me. Again, this one is all about almond, and it starts off with something citrusy and herbal. There's this quite rare note of tarragon in here that takes this release to a unique and niche-like direction. Because our almond, along with the fresh citrusy undertone, enriches this scent with some, slightly bitter quality provided here by multitude of herbs such as tarragon, rosemary and basil. But on the other hand, almond, tonka and vanilla trio doesn't quite allow to shift the fragrance to an entirely fougere territory. And to me, so it remains, where almond, this sweet trio, sort of wrestles with the other part of this scent character that's herbal and slightly bitterish. Interesting and unique scent, highly recommended, not old-fashioned at all despite the year of its release, which is 1998. And finally, to wrap this podcast with, we've got a lot budgety release, I would say. So this one is from the house Jeanne Arthes, and this one is called Macaron Amande. So let's have a look at the notes that this one is having. On the top we've got almond and dried plum, in the middle there's heliotrope and orange blossom, and finally in the base there's milk and vanilla. This one is certainly a price winner in this lineup. It cost me as little as 10 euros. And yes, I must admit that this almond-forward fragrance is a bit synthetic-y at times, but for the price it asks, it really delivers the quality. Again, this almond is moderately sweet, musky, clean, a bit translucent, a bit citrusy. It doesn't exactly give me the impression of a full-on macaron that in real life still retains a lot more of sweetness and density despite being fluffy, of course. but there's certainly a hint of one in this release. What's also remarkable is that this musky almond is quite lactonic, especially in the opening, but in the dry down though, all the faucets sort of settle, and what I'm having is this sweet musky almond forward fragrance with a perfumey hint of a macaron dessert. But that's it, guys. This wraps up today's podcast. If you've liked it, please give it a like, of course. Please consider subscribing and sharing your comments. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye-bye.